The first race weekend of 2026 in IndyCar is complete, and stop me if you heard this before. Alex Palou is the winner of the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Live from St. Pete, I'm Zion Brown here for IndyStar TV. Alex Palou is your winner for the second straight year here in the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Tremendous performance by Alex Palou, as we saw so often last year, 8 wins last year, and he starts 2026 off with a victory. He won by a race record nearly 12.5 seconds over Scott McLaughlin, the pole sitter, who came in second place. Palou, just a dominant performance all over the place, and it was mistake-free. We saw, a few accidents and a few, wrong pits and whatnot early on in the race. Week one, race one, it doesn't matter. Alex Palou and the entire Chip Ganassi Racing team were mistake-free, and that was really quite the difference in today's race. And another difference was his tire management. So this year, in this race, you have to go through 2 sets of your red alternate tires and at least 1 set of your black primary tires. So drivers were really put in an uncomfortable or a different position where the drivers and teams had to really choose which tires they were going to start the race with and then play out the rest of their strategies from there. Scott McLaughlin, I mentioned him on the pole, same with Marcus Ericsson, who sat P2 to start the day in that front row with McLaughlin. They started with their black tires. Alex Palou, P4 to start the day. He started with his red alternate tires, the faster tires, the ones that may wear out a little quicker, but they're faster at the start. And that made a difference. He was able to get up to that first place spot pretty quickly and then just pull away, get the gap up to 10 seconds. At one point, it was a little over 14 seconds for Palou, but both Palou, his strategist, Barry Wanser, and Scott McLaughlin all talked about that tire strategy being quite the difference in today's race. McLaughlin said, look, maybe we should have started with our red tires and things would have gone differently, but not the case for McLaughlin, who finished in second place. Two legends in the IndyCar series did not have their best showing today, and that is Will Power and Scott Dixon. For Will Power, of course, this was his first race with Andretti Global, and we saw Power in this race early on, about 20-ish laps in, have an accident running into the wall in turn 10 here in St. Pete. He did that unassisted, only a single car crash, and he had to pit and then step out of his car for quite some time. He got back in the race, still finished, 30-some laps down, and finished 22nd, just ahead of Dixon. Dixon really had a tough weekend for his standards, really for anybody's standards. Had problems with his car all 3 days, and today was no different. Had the rear right tire of his car pop off at one point today, and that ended his day as the suspension was damaged after that crash. Dixon was never able to get fully back into the car and back onto the track, and so he finished at 23rd. And so Will Power, of course, last year finishing 12th in his last year with Team Penske. There were questions about, was it a power issue? Was it a Team Penske issue? Similar issue to start this season, but we'll see how the rest of these, there's 17 races left, so it could be anything when it comes to that with Will Power. But Scott Dixon, surprisingly for a guy who, came in third last year, has the longest streak of winning a race ever, has won one every year for quite some time now. But in today's race and really all throughout the weekend, like I said, all 3 days had issues. So we'll see if Scott Dixon can recover from that as we head to Phoenix Raceway next week. And that's a good point, going to Phoenix Raceway with Dixon and Power. They're one of a handful of guys here who have actually driven there, right? The IndyCar series hasn't been in Phoenix since 2018, so we'll see if those two veterans can really put it together next week, given the advantage they have having done full races there in Phoenix. Lap 1, we saw a crash, and we saw Mick Schumacher, who was making his IndyCar debut, not even get through a full lap here today. Schumacher finished in 25th place after an accident with Stingray Robb and Santino Ferrucci. The accident between Ferrucci, Robb, and Schumacher was caused by Robb. Robb, coming from the back, kind of lost control, and he hit Ferrucci, who was to his left, knocked out Ferrucci. Behind Ferrucci was Mick Schumacher. Schumacher's day was over as his car actually came on top of the cars of Ferrucci and Robb. Robb was actually able to return to the race. Ferrucci and Schumacher weren't. But Robb returned to the race. He did suffer a 30-second penalty for causing the accident. But an unfortunate start for Schumacher. Was hoping to get through a full 100 laps here today, if nothing else, and he just wasn't able to do so. But Schumacher, he talked about it afterward, and he said, look, part of it's on me. I have to qualify better. Schumacher qualified in 21st, which which then really set him up in that position where he was not able to finish this race because of that crash. Just being in the back, being in that stockpile really hurt Mick Schumacher. So we'll see how he can do, the former F1 driver, going into Phoenix. First time racing in the oval full time for Mick Schumacher, so it'll be really fun to see how he does there and if he can actually finish that race in Phoenix. But he definitely talked about how he had to qualify better. If you watched yesterday, we talked a lot about the two Dale Coyne Racing drivers, Romain Grosjean and of course the rookie Dennis Hauger. They've had a pretty good day as well today. So both those guys were in the top 6 of qualifying. Grosjean finished 6th in today's race. Hauger, first race in the IndyCar series with a top 10 finish, finishing 10th. So look at those two guys. They were really able to put it together, and a surprisingly impressive performance all throughout the weekend from Dale Coyne Racing. We'll look to see if that's a continuous strategy. Hauger is really intriguing. Truly, when you look at him and just how dominant he was in Indy Next last year, to finish top 10 in his very first race of his IndyCar career, we could be watching one of the next best drivers really accelerate and get back to this top of the series. But we'll see how it progresses along the year with Hauger. Of course, it's him, Schumacher, and Kyle Collette, who I have not mentioned, as the 3 rookies in the Rookie of the Year race for this year. So we'll see each of those 3 do individually, but so far, Hauger has the leg up on the other 2. That'll do it for this weekend here in St. Pete, where we learned a little bit about, new teams, new drivers, and, how things may change a little bit. But at the same time, it was more of the same with Alex Palou coming in first. We'll see as we head to Phoenix if anybody can dethrone him in Phoenix, or if it'll be similar to last year when Palou won 5 of the first 6 races. But thanks for watching. All weekend long, I've had coverage here in St. Pete. I'm Zion Brown for IndyStar TV.